Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you probably one of the most illy timed for fun ideas that I've had in a long time. Now, that said, let's see how many people get past the intro. This is for fun, okay? If you're somebody that has skipped ahead to figure out why there's a Hive Crone on the thumbnail, hey, I don't know what to tell you except you already missed it. So, putting this disclaimer tends to keep the comments down, maybe not the dislikes, but this is a for fun idea. I do not expect you to take this and win multiple games doing this. This is more so a thought process for you to consider how to win more games with things like this. So, I have a Hive Crone on the thumbnail, and we'll get to that in a second. But right now, we're looking at Crusher Stampede. One of the things that is the biggest self-report to me as a Tyranids player, and I think those of us that have been more accustomed to Crusher Stampede can agree, is that when people say I don't have any stratagems to use here, that's a self-report. Okay, there's pretty decent stratagems to use within Crusher Stampede, but beyond that, I wanted to take that criticism, that common saying, and then remind the populace and myself at times that you still have core strats. I see a lot of people comment on this fact, and I realize a lot of people don't take the core strats into account with their game plan. Yeah, everybody's familiar with command reroll, but despite how many times I and other people say it, not too many people consider rapid ingress. And I know counteroffensive is expensive, but this is something too. So, what is going on with Crusher Stampede for today's video? Well, it's Core Strats Crusher Stampede, and the fact that we are going to do. Well, there's three tabs right now, but with those three tabs, I want to address how you can incorporate the idea of Core Strats into game plans, and Crusher Stampede does allow for a bit of a funnier one too. So, the core strats: command reroll, rapid ingress, counteroffensive, fire overwatch, epic challenge, go to ground, insane bravery, smokescreen grenade, heroic intervention, and tank shock. As Tyranid players, we don't have access to tank shot, grenade, smokescreen. That's it, right? We lose out on those, okay? But in Crusher Stampede, we do get to kind of substitute tank shock for massive impact. Now, you could say in Synaptic Nexus, there's a form of grenade. However, it takes too many fucking steps. I'd rather just take my monsters and do the tank shock thing with massive impact. But that's not the only reason why we are in Crusher Stampede today. The other thing is that using Untrampled Ferocity makes shit easier. Now, the other thing about this, though, is you are taking a risk, and sometime that risk will backfire on you. We will be using Untrammeled Ferocity to take our monsters and go through walls. However, you do have to remember that after you do this, you have to roll a d6, and on a 1, you become battle shocked. And if you're battle shocked, you can't use stratagems. So, this plant is not foolproof. There will be those times that you roll a 1 and completely fuck this, okay? There will be those times. But for right now, let's jump into why I have a Hive Crone on the thumbnail. Well, if future me does what I'm thinking, you probably understand I want to use a flamer, such as the Drool Cannon that is Torrent, doesn't ignore cover, but it is 2d6, 6, strength 6, AP 1, damage 1, okay? Now, going to something like Fire Overwatch is where this comes in. You don't have to make the Hive Crone aircraft, because you can put it with hover. So you are now just a flying monster hovering. And with 20 inches of movement, you can go across the board. And with Untrampled Ferocity, well, not specifically across the board, but you can make good distance across the board, right? With Untrampled Ferocity, you can go through shit. Instead of having to do the up, down, and around and a loop-de-loop and pull, now your shoes are looking cool. You can just go through shit. And because you are playing Crusher Stampede, if you have not taken damage and you are not battle shocked, your now flying monster has OC2, right? But that's just while I'm talking about the Hive Crone, because I doubt I'll make a second video to talk about that further. Going to the core strat part of the Hive Crone, with it being a flying monster, you have access to Tank Shock, and it is the melee equipped variant out of the kit between the Hive Crone and the Harpy. You probably want to fight with the Hive Crone. You have Tank Shock, but also you have access to Fire Overwatch. Why is this probably the worst time I could ever make this video? Well, after Grotmas and looking at the things that the elves just got, a lot of things are saying, hey, we ignore Fire Overwatch. But Fire Overwatch has been pretty good for a pretty decent amount of time. And when you are using a flamer, you get your hits without needing to depend on sixes. So with Fire Overwatch, I am taking a Hive Crone, going to a point, and Fire Overwatching. And again, remember, this is for fun. Results will drastically vary. There is no guarantee that your 2d6 rolls higher than a 2. Sometimes you'll get a 12, sometimes you'll get a 2. That is how chance goes. You are dealing with Strength 6 AP1 Damage 1, and to that you'd say, why do I care this much about this flamer for 200 points? Well, two things. If you are asking me about the points cost of the Hive Crone, but have been in my comments yelling about how I need to care about the warriors for 215 plus more, let's think about it. I think that 6 inches of movement of infantry is about the same of 20 inches of movement. But to be more realistic, it's a flamer. This will give me roughly 2 chances to fire it, because the other thing that, yes, you go, I can shoot T9 and there's anti-fly, anti-monster. I have things in the game against me that can take out a Hive Crone. That is absolutely correct. But at the same time, I do implore us to at least think a little bit about where you put the Hive Crone. I don't have a map pulled up or whatever, or a layout I should say. But if your opponent has small infantry over on, let's just say over here, and anti-tank thing, anti-fly basilisk thing over here, small infantry, yeah, let's fly over here, okay? Let's fly over here, pick up that unit. My 200 points might make 150-ish back, right? And if they survive, and they do any amount of movement, Fire Overwatch. Now, you might be asking yourself, how are you using all of these fucking command points? In comes the next part as to why I'm doing this idea, right? At LVO, there were a lot of lists that had double tyrants. Most of those included Tyrant Guard, but there was a list that did not. And going back to a video that I've made, I talked about how if I'm doing double Tyrant, I'm probably taking the Winged Hive Tyrant and the Swarm Lord and swapping out the Tyrant Guard for the Maleceptors. For a Maleceptor, I should say. Now, that said, this is not to say that Walkrent and Swarm Lord is not viable or whatever. If anything, my idea is the less viable one. But I figured while I'm trying shit, I might as well take one of my ideas that is no longer as prominent because Synaptic Nexus got nerfed, and put it in some shit that does give me options. Because in Crusher Stampede, we are a fighting detachment for the most part. With Rapid Monstrosities, I can reroll the hit rolls, and then with Twin Linked, I can reroll the wound rolls. With Savage Roar, I can, when my enemy is hitting me, -1 to hit. If they fail the battle shock test, -1 to wound. So, and then like I said, Massive Impact Charge Phase, shit like that. I have some fight phase things the same way that I had -1 AP into the Vect aura of the Swarm Lord and, I'm sorry, the malign presence of the Swarm Lord, and do paroxysm, all of the things. So, this is just me while I'm testing shit and having fun, taking that idea and putting it somewhere else. So, at current, we have 3 data sheets on here. Hive Crone for Fire Overwatch shenanigans and or Massive Impact, / Tank Shock. Hive Tyrant, Swarm Lord. Now, the other thing, they're not just here for CP generation and CP reduction. Hive Tyrant also flies and is a monster and is a character that, like I said, would like to be in the fight phase, doing fight phase shit. Going back to the core strats, Rapid Ingress. It has Deep Strike. If you Rapid Ingress your Winged Hive Tyrant behind a wall. Now, that is a note too. You have to be careful with this shit. This is not a beginner friendly idea. This is a fuck around, maybe find out type of idea that I'm talking in this video. You have to be careful because the Winged Hive Tyrant, as we all know, is fucking big. So your opponent might still have an angle on it if you're not too careful. You have to make it look uninteresting as possible, right? So with it being also a flying monster, you have decent movement and can do the same, go through walls. And if you go through walls, your Winged Hive Tyrant can do the things that we said before, in addition to some others. So you can tank shock, but, you know, I will say, you could heroically intervene with your Hive Crone. I don't necessarily recommend it, but doing that with the Winged Hive Tyrant, a little bit more appealing. Because, again, you can -1 attacks from the weapons of your enemy with -1 to hit, possibly -1 to wound. That's a little bit more appealing. Outside of that, you also have the fact that Epic Challenge. When you are a character unit, cough cough Winged Hive Tyrant, if you need the precision, you can have the precision. And if you need the precision, while in addition to rerolling hits, there you go. The other thing about being in Crusher Stampede with this tactic is I can put an enhancement on the Winged Hive Tyrant. And just because we're utilizing things like Rapid Ingress and going through walls, the enhancement I'm putting on the Winged Hive Tyrant is Monstrous Nemesis. Each time the bear makes a melee attack that targets a monster or vehicle unit, add 1 to the wound roll. That way, my Strength 9 that goes to 10 because of Synapse will wound T10 vehicles, monsters or vehicles, on 3s. And I'm twin linked. Now, I will also say, again, another caveat. You only have 6 attacks when you do this. So, that's why you are making that shit count. You are doing this into things that you aren't necessarily, like, don't go throwing a Winged Hive Tyrant into Angron and expecting to take Angron down. We're not doing that. This is for shit like the Doomsday Arcs of the conversation right now. This is for the Vindicator. Okay, maybe not Vindicator because they can shoot within combat. The Land Raiders of the land, right? This is for the other shit, the Forge Fiends, things like that are susceptible enough to dying. You have AP too. If you get to put them on saving on 5s with your AP2 or even 6s because they don't have an invuln, right? And they have a low save, go for it. But, don't try to do this necessarily into an opponent's Angron. Trying to think of something smaller that you probably still don't want to do this into. Probably not Bjorn the Fail-Handed. Shit like that, maybe not. Maybe out of desperation. But, going to our other friend, the Hive Crone, you do have Tentaclids that are anti-vehicle 4-up devastating wounds. To which you can do the split fire shenanigans of if you are just picking away at the smaller shit because they don't have a can't be Overwatch type of thing, and if they fuck around and move, they're fried. Uh, just throw the tentaclids into whatever vehicle that you are thinking, if you can, right? Don't expose yourself too much. Again, take these things and think about the situation. Throw these into whatever you're going to throw the Winged Hive Tyrant into with Monstrous Nemesis. Maybe pick off 2 or 4 wounds, right? Some shit like that. Because you fucking can. That's the idea. And the other thing with the Thorax Spur is it is anti-fly to maybe get another D6 into something that can fly, right? But that's why the Winged Hive Tyrant is also there, because it is a deep striking flying monster character. So you can make use of other shit, such as counteroffensive on top of that, because this is the more melee combatant of those. Remember, counteroffensive exists. Fight phase. Just after an enemy unit has fought, one unit from your army that is within engagement range of one or more enemy units that has not been already selected to fight this phase, your unit fights next. 2 CP, expensive. Gets less expensive when you have a Hive Tyrant and the Swarm Lord, because you have generated CP and -1 CP. So, if it only costs 1 command point compared to something else being free, maybe consider using counteroffensive. Epic challenge, already talked about. Go to ground, we're not talking about infantry today, but remember that you have this. You can give the benefit of cover and 6-up invul and save. Um, I've talked about this when I had, again, Synaptic Nexus with the Warriors. We do one squad that has a 5-up invuln, one squad that gets -1 AP, another squad gets benefit of cover and 6-up invulns with go to ground. Like, that covers your units. Now that's expensive again, but that was going back to if I were to have double tyrant situation, right? So there's that. But yeah, that's the idea of the gist of it. Swarmlord, just here for the CP generation, and also is still a monster and a character. So the shit that I said kind of applies over here to the Winged Hive Tyrant, applies to the Swarmlord. But hopefully, seeing this video gives you ideas to remember what things you have available to you. Crusher Stampede catches a lot of flack for not the best reasons sometimes, because people haven't taken it out in a bit. Like, people remember the first part of when you didn't have the objective control shit and never got back around to the other shit you can do. Don't get me wrong, and raised reserves and null nodules still fucking ass, right? Terrible. Still don't really fuck with them. Ominous Presence, decent enough, I guess. Monstrous Nemesis, I wish it was cheaper. But between auto exploding your monsters, keep that in mind. I don't see people do this enough. And I guess I will say this is the other thing about this for fun playstyle idea thing, whatever. This doesn't work on flying models, right? So keep that in mind too. But also, you have not everybody. I play I play Tyranids different than some other people might, and that's not to say, oh, I'm so unique. I've nobody's ever done this before, but some people's playstyle gets comfortable staying at exactly the mid board and never going further. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to implement an idea like this, I am encouraging you for more aggressive playstyles. Now, you're not fucking World Eaters, you're not Blood Angels, you're not going to get up there and beat everybody's ass, because we realistically don't have too many monsters that do good at melee. Oh, and on that note, I probably should mention another one that I want to talk about for this idea. Sorry for the last minute inclusion. I'm usually better than this for these type of videos. But the Trigon, I've been giving it a second chance purely because it has 12 attacks, hidden on 3, strength 9, AP 2, damage 3. 150 points, deep strike behind a wall, rapid ingress behind a wall, next turn go through walls, charge into something, unleash 12 attacks. Right? Right. Uh, so that's that. But, if you push forward, also keep in mind Trigon does not have Deadly Demise. So it can't do this idea on that one. But if you push forward with something like a Maliceptor, just to get your aura, your 6-inch aura, a little bit deeper of -1 to hit touching shit, just a little bit, you'd be surprised. And then your opponent will also be surprised. They're like, I was going to pick up the Maliceptor anyway. And you say, cool, you're either going to take 6-inch -1 to hit aura around you, or when I explode, I do D3 to probably most of your shit that's still back here, right? With Untrampled Ferocity, you can go through enemy models within engagement range, right? You can do that too. So that's option, like an option there. Do you do it with a horror spec, where it's just like, all right, I tried to beat your ass in the fighting. It's not really going too great. You surrounded me. You killed me. Pop Corrosive Viscera when you go down, especially if your shit is not going to be affected. Swarm Guided Salvos. Ignore modifiers to ballistic skill or the hit roll. And ignore cover. So the same way that I'm like, well, you have essentially 2 turns with the Hive Crone at minimum. Kind of. Not really. Work with me here. If I really need a torrent that ignores cover for some fucking... Oh, and this is the other thing on target priority. Practice this idea, maybe with some other shit. I'm again not encouraging Hive Crone shenanigans too high. But, for example, fucking Scourges of Drukhari. Just the only thing... I'm sorry, Drukhari, if you're listening to this. Drukhari players, if you're listening to this and like, why do we always catch strays? But, like, that's a unit that has las cannons, dark lances, whatever, and can scoot and shoot. So they come out from behind the wall, shoot your fucking monster, get back behind the wall. Throw a Hive Crone that fucking way. Pick up some bullshit that has las cannon shots. Do that shit for probably not tank busters, but like breaker boys, right? Some shit that will have an issue because you are just significantly better in one way, right? They have a better gun, but go pick them up with your gun that wasn't going to pick up some other shit. Think about the target priority with this idea. And then if they move Dracarys, fucking fire overwatch them. Do this shit next to a Rhino. Maybe stop the fucking Rhino, right? Maybe stop the Rhino. But do this shit next to a Rhino, where you think your opponent might want to disembark. Fire overwatch them. Now, I say this idea with the Hive Crone in mind. That's because it's just fucking easier. But maybe if you have rapid ingress, right? Rapid ingress, a an acid spray Tyrannifex, an acid fex, onto a board edge where you know that it's not going to be picked up by itself, but your opponent wants to do something. Rapid ingress the Tyrannifex on a board edge, fire overwatch them, then just piss them off with whatever the fuck else you need to after that. Maybe you gotta give it Swarm Guided Salvos on something, right? I'm just saying, sure, Crusher Stampede might not have the flashiest of stratagems, but if you're going to sit here and tell me that Invasion Fleet and you've only used the 5-up Feel No Pain for your entire game, I don't know, man. I think that it's a little bit better on the stratagem side than we want to give credit. So, this is just an idea for fun to do to remind you that the core strats still exist. I know we don't have access to many of them, or all of them, I should say. We have access to enough of them, I guess. But we don't get smoke screen, grenade, or tank shock. So the game's a little bit harder for us. But for just an idea of things you can do with your friends, maybe at the local game shop. Remember, Crusher Stampede can give you access to tank shock in a way, and you can do things in places and try it, right? Try it. So yeah, that's what today's video is aimed at. Leave your feedback if you've remembered your core stratagems and actually implement them. They get left at home a lot but they probably shouldn't. So yeah, if you like the video, like it, got a comment for me, comment, and until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.